We are in Daf Chav Amar Aleph, top of the page. We're talking about mats. Last we said it was Rava's pshat in the Mishnah. And Rava said that everybody agrees by a large mat that the sama is lasiko because you don't lay on it. It's hard and it's large. So that would be the sama lasiko. And the Machlokes is that the Tanakama said that a small mat is stama yeshiva, and therefore it's makabel tuma, and if you cannot use it. And Blazer argued, he said, Bain Gedayla, Bain Katana is going to be, it has to be a sol l'shchiv. You have to actually make it for laying down because it's made out of kanim here and it's hard, it's not comfortable. He would say that also is stama l'shchiva, is stama l'sikuch. And therefore you would be able to use it unless it was designated for laying, for as a mat to lay on. Okay, that is where we got up to. And we are...
If something is designated for a sukkah, isn't that a kli for a sukkah?
It's designated to be used as chach.
Designated to use, so therefore you're saying this is not a kli.
It's not a kli, meaning
it's not a kli.
The item is really not, it's pieces of wood or pieces of reed, so it's not a kli. Doesn't have any use.
I mean, if you're making something like a mat, you're making something, now you have something. It's not just shtiklach of the sticks. And you know what I mean?
That's an interesting question. And if I designate, I'll say if I make it to be an umbrella, right? I want it to protect me from the shade. So why isn't that a shimush? That would be considered a kli that's makabel tumah. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I could just speculate that the emes is that this machatzalas, this mat that you're lying on, is also not really a kli. Its usage is for laying on, and there's a special tumah called tumas medrus, a tumah for lying on something, and something that says they need to be lying on. So that's called maybe a shimush, maybe something which is just acts as a piece of wood that happens to protect you from the sun because you can put it up on top of you. That doesn't make it really into a kli. Right, so maybe it's the fact that it's for laying on that makes it something. The fact that it's designated to be used for schach would be a kli. It's a good point. Okay, we are 2, 4, 6, 8 lines down from the top. Last two words on the line is Amar Lei. So we're going to have Abaye is going to counter Rava's pshat in the Mishnah. Amar Lei, Abaye. If you're right that Rebbe Eliezer here is coming, I feel like I missed something here. 1 second. Yeah, I'm going to Ihachi Rebbe Eliezer Oimer Achas Katana B'Achas Gedayla Achas Gedayla B'Achas Nami Baile. Well, it doesn't. You're telling me here that Rebbe Eliezer is coming to argue Lakula, right? And he's saying no. Not only are large mats kosher for schach, but even small ones also are. So really, the way he should have said that was, well, I'll bein gedola bein katana. Not only if they're large, but even if they're small. Usually the thing that you're comparing to, the thing that you're comparing to is first, and then that you want to, your addition is going to be second, right? So that's really, he shouldn't have said achas katana v'achas gedela. He should have said achas gedela v'achas katana mibayla. That's what he should have said in the Mishnah. Rashi gives a bunch of examples where it's the second thing. The first thing is the one that you're comparing to, and the second thing is the chiddush. He said he brings in the long Rashi here achas gedela v'achas katana, but a little more than halfway down that Rashi, he brings a Gemara Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah says echad yavne v'echad kol ma'akayim, and bavakam echad achayfer bar v'echad achayfer shiach ma'ara. So the thing that was pashut goes first, and the thing you're adding goes second. So if it was pashut that Gedola is kosher, you're adding katana, so Gedola should have gone first, and katana should have gone second. So that's a bias kashi. That's what he says. He should have said achas Gedola achas katana mibayla. First question. Va'id ki piligi begedola hu depligi. Eliezer l'chumra. Well, you'll see that he actually, again, and we have it, that the Rava has it, that everybody agrees by Gedola and argues by Katana. And Rabbi Eliezer is going Lakula. It's exactly the opposite, says Abaya. It's really that everybody agrees by Katana. They argue by Gedola, and Rabbi Eliezer is a Chumra, not a Kula. So let's see that. The Tani learned in a Brisa. Machatzal sakanim. You got you have a reed mat, bigadayla mesachim ba, a large one you can use for schach abiliyas. If it's not mekabelas tuma, then you can use it. Meaning, stam it would be. And he's arguing look chumra. So Abai doesn't like Rav's shot. Elam Papa. So Papa says as follows: if you have a small mat, even though it's made out of reeds and it's hard, it's small. It's probably made for laying, and therefore it's going to be mekabelas tuma unless it was specifically made not for that. The machlekes is by a large. Large mats are not meant for laying. You don't need it; it's too big. What does the mission mean then when it says asal l'shchiva? Meaning that was how we started with this problem, because the lashon asal l'shchiva sounds like that if you're specifically making it to lay on, that's when it's a problem. Now you're telling me Rabbi Elazar holds that it's always a problem. So where it says you have to explain the Mishnah to mean as follows. This is what the Mishnah means. Stam asiyasa nami l'shchiva ada avid l'sikach. Stam, you have to add in those words. Asal l'sikach means stam asiyasa. Generally, whenever it's being made, it's made for shchiva, unless you make it specifically l'sikach, and then it would be kosher for schach. Tarabah. We have a brisa. Machatzals shel shifa v'shel gem. If you have a mat made out of papyrus or bulrush, that's gemi. These are softer materials, Rashi says. These are softer. So gedoyla, if it's large, mesachechin ba, you can use it for schach. Ketana, if it's small in mesachechin ba, then you can't use it for schach because you'd assume that it was made for shchiva, for laying on. Shalkan and v'shal chilas. If it was made out of reeds, or chilas is reeds that were made for plaiting. Plaiting is a fancy word for braiding. Okay, so then gedayla, if it's large misachechba, you can use it for schach. Aruga, but if it was woven, it wasn't just braided, but when you braid things, they end up with bumps. If it's a thick material, when it's woven, it's smoother. So if it was aruga, then ein mesachechin. But if it was woven, then you would not be able to use it because then you'd assume that it was made for shchiva. You wouldn't go through all that effort of weaving it if you don't want to lay on it. He says on all of these scenarios you can use it for schach either because it's too big or because it is too hard, and therefore in all these cases you can assume that it was made for it was not made for laying on, and therefore you'd be able to use it for schach.
Even the soft ones?
So I'm not sure about a one. Don't know what he would hold about a soft one that was small. I don't know if he's just arguing in the case of chilas. And it could be he's just arguing on that and saying that in the case of reeds where it's hard, and even if it was woven, it would still be used. Since it's a hard material, it's not something you'd use for shchiva, for laying on. And Rabbi Daisa said the same. He agreed to Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi that okay, now the Gemara is going to bring a Mishnah where Rabbi Daisa is a part of, and when we get to Amid Beis, we're going to come back and ask a question that on what we just said, that Rabbi Daisa in this scenario agrees to Rabbi Shmuel and says that there's no problem, you can use it for schach. We're going to, after we finish learning a bunch, we'll come back and ask a question on it. So let's learn right to Tana. So we learned in a Mishnah in Idias. Kol hachaytzalis mitamin tame meis. All chaytzalis, the Gemara will describe what chaytzalis are in a moment, but chaytzalis are tame meis. The chachamim aimim midras. They're tame medras. Medras means it's meant for lying on. Okay, medras is a tumah by a zav. That if a zav lays on something, even if he's not lying there, even if he doesn't touch it, it will become tamei. That's called tumas medras. That's a very severe tumah, it's an ava tumah, just like a tumah's mace. Just like if a person comes in contact with the corpse, he becomes tummy mace. It's an ava tumah. Medrash is also an ava tumah. Tumah's medrash would be an ava tumah. Now, so the Gemara is like, 1 second. It sounds like the Chacham are saying that they're arguing on Reb Deis. Reb Deis is saying that it's Tamei Tumas Mace, and Chacham are saying no, it's not Tamei Tumas Mace, it's Tamei Tumas Medrash. But that doesn't make sense because it wouldn't. If it's Tamei Medrash, that means it's this item is designated for laying on. That means it's a kli, and for sure it'll be mace. Somebody says Medrash in Tamei Mace. Why? V'anat nan we learned in a Mishnah. Call it Tamei Medrash. Anything which becomes Tamei Medrash mitame mace, and it for sure becomes tamei mace because if it's tamei medrash, that means it's considered designated for a kli, even for laying, specifically for laying on. So then it's for sure considered a kli, and it'll become tamei mace. So where it says ema ath medrash, so the Chacham are saying that it's also, meaning Reb Daisu is saying it's only mitame tamei mace and it's not mitame medrash. And the Chachamim are coming to say, no, it's even Mitame Medrash. Okay, so now we got what happened. Now, what in the world are we talking about? My Chaitzalis, what is this Chaitzalis? So we have two pshat. Amar Rav Avdimi Bar Hamduri, he says it's a Marzoibli. Marzoibli. My Marzoibli. What's a Marzoibli? Rabbi Abba, it's a Mazbili. Aha. And what's the Mazbili? So Rashi says, Mazbili, 4 lines up from the bottom, all the way on the bottom of the page, 4 lines up. Mazbili, Rashi says, is a bulus, which is a leather sack, which was made, it was made for a shepherd, to put under his head of the lishkav and to sleep on, or it was made to carry, to bring, in my Lazi Rashi, it says, it's a leather sack the shepherds would use to carry food for the animals, okay? Or it would be used as a pillow. Okay, that's a mazbuli. Great. One shot. Second shot, Rav Shimon Malaka Shemer, machatzalas mamish. It is what it sounds like. Chaitzalas sounds like machatzalas. Machatzalas is a mat. So he says it's a mat. It is a mat. It's a regular mat. Okay. I guess in some other language, or like they call it chaitzalas, they would call it mat, machatzalas. Okay. Reish Lakish gives a major introduction to his next comment. Okay, and he says as follows: There's a idea that for a person during the Teichshana of after a person loses a parent or a rebbe, so whenever he mentions their name, he says, Hareini kaparis mishkava. What does that mean? So if you look 3 lines up on the bottom of Rashi, Rashi is Hareini kaparas. It means Yisurin habaran alai, but any Yisurin that come upon me, lekaparase, should be as a kapara. So meaning, it's an act of kavod. Rashi, so here he was saying it specifically about Reb Chia Ubanov, Yiyu, but Lashon kavod uzeh. This is Lashon of kavod. A person mentions the name of his Rebbe or his father after he passes away. So he says, Hareini kaparas mishkavai. That means any Yisroel that come to me should be a kapara for their neshama, for Reb Chia. So Reish Lakish was saying it about Reb Chia and his sons. So Hareini kaparas Reb Chia Ubanov. And he gives an introduction to who were Reb Chia and Ubanov. So he says, in the beginning, when laws began to be forgotten amongst Klal Yisrael, Ezra came up from Babel, and even though there were many other around at the time, the Nevi'im, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Daniel, Ezra was the one who fought to make sure Torah was not forgotten. So, Chazra v'nishtach, generations later, again, things were starting to get shvach. So Hil Habavuli, all the Hil Habavuli v'yazda. So Hil came with a Torah from Shmai and Aftalion, and he won, and again, being a chizuk in Torah. And then Chazra v'nishtach, and then again, generations later, it began to be forgotten, and Reb Chia Ubanov came, they established Torah again. So this is So meaning you say you got to take what I'm about to say very seriously. So what is it that Reb Chia Banav says? Reb Chia Banav. Reb Daisa and Nacham, again, he's saying, you see that Reb Chia understood that Chetzalis were machatzalis, were mats. And he said that Reb Daisa and Nacham did not argue about the machatzalis, the mats that they had in Usha, Shein Temeis. Because sure, the mats that they had there, everybody would use to sleep on. Okay, that's what they were used for. No one used them for anything else. Bishal Tveria, and the mats in Tveria, Shein Tahirais, those were Tahira. Rashi says because they were hard, yes, they were bristled, they weren't comfortable to sleep on, and nobody would lay on those.
So they were good for simple.
So those would be good for sukkah. So where was the machlekes between Reb Daisa and the Chacham? Hashar Makayim is everywhere else. I mean, you had two extremes. And what about other everywhere else? That was, I guess, the Chacham. That was Reb Daisa. Reb Daisa held that, listen, since Rashi says most people do not use them as mats to lay on, and therefore it has a din of Tveria, and therefore you can use it as chach. Listen, there are people that will use it for schach, will use it as a mat to sleep on. Therefore, kedu usha dam, you got to compare it to usha, and they will be done. So that is, again, we have two ways to learn what chetzalis are. Either chetzalis were these pillows or these bags that you carry things in, the shepherds will carry, or they're talking about mats. And Rish Lakish brought, he says, Reb Chia learned like me that it was mats. Now let's go back and discuss that halacha. I'm sorry?
Depends what you did with it, whether it's large or small. Depends what you did with it. If you didn't sit on it.
In a place where nobody sat on mats, if nobody sits on mats, nobody lays on mats, so then they're fine. Yeah, okay, and then we're going to go back to this brisa. Amar Mar. So we learned previously. Kol achoy tzalos mitamin tamei meis. Reb Daisa. So Reb Daisa said that all these chetzalos are going to be tamei tumas meis, but they are not going to be tumas medders. But in any event, he said that they become tamei. Okay, well, 1 second.
Then you can't use it.
Yeah, Vatanya, we learned in a brisa before, when I mentioned before this brisa that v'chein haya Rabbi Daisa Eimer Kedvar, Rabbi Daisa said like Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, who said that you can use these machatzalis, no issues. You can use them. That means that they're not mekabel tuma. They're not used. They're not a kli. So we have a sira. Rabbi Daisa here is telling me that these mats have a din. The tamei meis, that means they have a din of a kli. They may not be tamei medrash, so they don't lay on them, but he holds that they're a kli. And Rabbi Daisa elsewhere said that they, like Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yosi, that you could use these mats, that they're not kalim at all. So we got a problem. It's more like kasha. Two different types of mats. There were mats with rims, and there are mats without rims. Like kasha, had the islay gadanfa, had the lesle gadanfa. Depends if it has a rim around it. If it has an edge or a rim, so that means you're able to hold things in it. You can hold things in it, it's a kli. If it doesn't have an edge, it means you can't hold anything in it, then it's not going to be a kli. So like the Gemara Meisvei, we got a problem. Because we have a brayz that says chaytzlois shal sham v'shal gem. Again, if they're made of papyrus or of bulrush, v'shal sak v'shal safira. Sak is made out of goat's hair, and safira is made out of horse hair. The Tame Meis of Reb Daisa. Reb Daisa says the Tame Tumas Meis. The Chacham Av Medrash. They're also Tame Tumas Medrash. Well, let's see. What are we talking about over here? Bish Amavanda Amar Mar Zubali that we're talking about Chaytzalis. What does Chaytzalis means? It means these Mar Zubali, which were pouches, so that to hold stuff in it, or they were pillows. So Mar Zubali Shal Sham Bishal Gemi Chazul Kitna de Peri. Okay, that makes sense. So even though it was a very loose weave, but you could still hold fruit in it. The fruit wouldn't fall out. You might not be able to hold other stuff in it, but fruit wouldn't fall out. Okay, so it would be a kli. And if it was shalsak v'shal safira, and if it was made out of goat's hair or horse hair, then chazu legul kli v'tzani. So that could be even used for
long pouches and sacks.
Yeah, these were woven much better. You can actually put in beans and little fruit in them, because they have a usage. That's great. Chazu leparsu. Okay, elamandam rachatzalis mamish. But 1 second. According to Rish Lakish, who said that what are chaitzlas? Chaitzlas are mats. So we have mats here, and you're telling me that they're tamatatumas meser daisa. Mats that are matamatumas meser. Well, what in the world? And they have a gadan. All right, so they got this thing on them. What can you carry in them? So it says Bishlam Mishal Sak Bishal Safir, if it was made out of goat's hair or horse hair. So then Chazu Leparsi Vinavusa. So there you can still, this thing could be considered a kli, because you can use it for a vilon, you can use it for a shade, or you can use it as a sifter. Okay, you can use it to sift your flour. So it has a din of a kli. It could be used as a vilon, a shade, or it could be used as a sifter. Okay, but ela shalshan v'shalgemi. But these mats that are made out of papyrus or of bulrush, which have the very loose braids, and they can't hold much in it. L'may chazi. What can you use this thing for? So Gemara says, and therefore, why should they be kabel tuma? What could you use them for? They're not made for sleeping on. So why are they metamatuma as mace? So Gemara says, linizaisa, liniziyasa. Use it to cover a barrel of beer. You have a barrel, you want to throw something on it, so animals don't get into it. So then you cover it with this thing, and that's why it would be considered tamei tumah space. Okay, says the Gemara. Ikeda Amri, where I lost it here. Ikeda Amri. Others say over this memra in a different way. The opposite. If you hold that it was machatzalos mamish, that it was really mats, and then shalsham shalgeni chazul niziyasa, and shalsak and shalsafir chazul leparsi v'nafusa. I understand why they are tumas meis, because they're things that you can use it for, either for being a cover or on your barrel, or for sifting or as a shade. Marzubli, according to them, that said it was a pouch. So bishlam mishal sak mishal safira chazil legul klivitsani, and then you can carry a little fruit in it, and you can carry beans in it. El shal shavi shal gami. But if you have this bag, this sack that's made out of papyrus, so what are you going to carry in that? Well, my chazi. Mar says chazi lekintna de peri. You can cut big fruit that wouldn't fall out from this loose weave, or this loose braid. Tanya Amr Chananya, Kishirati Lagoila. When I went down to Golos Matsasi Zakin Echad, I found one Zakin. V'Amarli, and he said to me, Misachichin bebudya. You can use budya as chach, and budya is a machatzalas, a mat. Okay. Ukishabasi is a Yeshua achi. But when I found Rabbi Yeshua, my uncle, he agreed that you could use the machatzelas in Bavel. You can use the machatzelas as schach. Amar Chizda v'udelasle gadanfa. Just make sure that machatzelas doesn't have an edge, a rim around it, like Rav Daisa said on top. Amar Ula Hani Bodisa B'nei Mechuza. This mat of the B'nei Mechuza. Ilmale kir shalahen, if it wasn't for the fact that it had an edge around it, you'd be allowed to use it. Tanya Namiyachi, we have a brace like that as well. Mesachim bebudja, v'myeshla and kir ein mesachim behen. You can be mesachich. You can use as chach. You can use these mats, and if it has a edge or a rim that can hold other things in it, then ein mesachim behen, and you would not be allowed to use it. Hajin al sukkah, hajin al sukkah, hajin al sukkah. I think tomorrow we'll begin the next paddock.
So how we hold the large mats, small mats, what they're made out of, or what?